The blood pooled around him like a dark halo, and Emma Jenkins knew she should keep walking, should call 911 and let someone else handle the dying man crumpled in the alley behind her apartment building. But his hand twitched, fingers curling against the wet pavement, and she found herself running toward him instead of away. "Hey, can you hear me?" She dropped to her knees beside him, her scrubs already stained from a double shift at the hospital. The man's face was turned away, obscured by long white hair matted with blood. She reached for his neck, searching for a pulse, and gasped when his skin met hers, cold as marble, yet somehow still alive beneath her fingertips. His eyes opened then, and Emma forgot how to breathe. They were the color of fresh blood, crimson and gleaming even in the dim light of the alley, beautiful and terrible all at once. His lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear over the hammering of her own heart. "Don't try to talk," she said, already assessing his injuries with practiced efficiency. Multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen, defensive cuts on his forearms. Someone had tried very hard to kill him. "I'm going to help you, okay? I'm a nurse. Just stay with me." She pulled her phone from her pocket, but his hand shot out with startling speed, gripping her wrist. The strength in those fingers made her gasp. No one this injured should be able to move like that. No hospitals. His voice was a rasp of silk and stone, accented with something old and foreign. "No doctors, no police. You're dying," Emma said bluntly. "You need you." Those crimson eyes fixed on her with such intensity she felt it like a physical touch. "I need you. Take me inside, please." Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, foolish, possibly fatal. But Emma had spent her entire life ignoring the sensible voice in her head, the one that sounded too much like her late mother's disappointed sighs. She'd become a nurse despite the warnings that she'd burn out, had moved to this city alone, had chosen again and again to help even when it cost her. "Can you stand?" she asked. He tried and nearly collapsed. Emma caught him, staggering under his weight despite his lean frame. He felt heavier than he looked, solid in a way that didn't make sense. Together they stumbled toward the back entrance of her building, leaving a trail of blood behind them. Her apartment was on the first floor, thank God. She maneuvered them through the door and kicked it shut behind them, half carrying the stranger to her bathroom. He slumped against the wall while she grabbed her first aid kit, the extensive one she'd built over years of patching up people who couldn't or wouldn't go to the ER. "I need to cut away your shirt," she said, reaching for scissors. He nodded, those strange eyes never leaving her face. The fabric fell away in pieces, revealing a body that looked like it had been carved from pale stone. Despite the blood and injuries, she could see the defined muscles, the sharp lines of his collarbones, the almost inhuman perfection of his form. The wounds themselves were deep but already beginning to close. Emma blinked, certain she was seeing things. She'd been awake for 20 hours straight. Exhaustion was making her hallucinate. "What are you?" she whispered, grateful. He caught her hand again, more gently this time. "You saved my life, Emma Jenkins. How do you know my—" She stopped, noticing her name badge still pinned to her scrubs. "Right. I am Silvain Nightborne." He said it like a title, like a name that should mean something. "And I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Emma wet a cloth and began cleaning the blood from his chest, trying to focus on the task and not on the way his muscles tensed under her touch. "Let's start with you not dying in my bathroom. We'll worry about debts later." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are not afraid of me. Should I be?" "Yes." The word was soft but absolute. "Most people are." Emma met those crimson eyes steadily. "I work in the emergency room in downtown Seattle. I've seen pretty much everything. You want to scare me? You'll have to do better than weird eyes and fast healing." "Fast healing," he repeated, something shifting in his expression. "Is that what you think this is? What else would it be?" Instead of answering, Silvain smiled, revealing elongated canines that definitely hadn't been visible before. Sharp, deadly, impossible. Emma's hand froze, cloth pressed against his sternum. Her brain tried to supply rational explanations, cosmetic dentistry, some kind of disorder, a really committed goth phase, but the truth sat in her chest like a stone. "You're a vampire," she said flatly. "The vampire." His voice carried weight now, authority that seemed to fill the small bathroom. "King of the North American territory, ruler of 17 bloodlines, and currently very much your mercy." Emma sat back on her heels, processing. A vampire, the vampire king apparently, in her bathroom, bleeding all over her tile. "Okay," she said slowly. "Okay, well you're still injured, so let's deal with that first and have our existential crisis later." Silvain stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You believe me? I'm cleaning blood off someone with glowing red eyes and fangs who's healing in real time. Belief isn't really optional at this point." She dipped the cloth in water again, her hands remarkably steady. "What I want to know is what happened to you. Who does this to the vampire king? His expression darkened. Betrayers, cowards. Those who think a blade through the heart in a dark alley is how kingdoms change hands. Is it working? Emma gestured to his chest. The heart thing? It would have if they'd used the right blade. Silver, pure silver through the heart is one of the few things that can truly kill us. He touched his chest gingerly. These were steel, painful, weakening, but not fatal. Eventually I would have healed. Eventually? Emma raised an eyebrow. You looked pretty close to death when I found you. I was. Something flickered in those crimson eyes, vulnerability, quickly masked. Another hour and I wouldn't have had the strength to heal. The sun would have risen, and that would have been the end of Silvain Nightborne. The casual way he said it made Emma's chest tighten. She'd seen death before, had held patients' hands as they slipped away, but something about this man, this creature speaking of his own mortality, struck her differently. Well, you're not dead, she said briskly, applying antiseptic to the wounds even though they were clearly healing on their own. And we're going to keep it that way. Do you need anything? Blood, I assume? Silvain's eyes fixed on her throat with sudden, startling intensity. Emma felt her pulse jump, hot and fast, and saw his nostrils flare. I should not, he said carefully. You have already done enough. That's not an answer. I need blood, yes, but I will not take yours. You are under my protection now whether you accept it or not. I do not feed from those under my protection. Emma stood, walking to her kitchen. She opened the freezer and pulled out a bag of blood she'd brought home from the hospital, technically against regulations. But she'd been planning to practice IV insertion techniques. Will this work? She asked, holding up the bag. Silvain's eyes widened. You just have blood in your freezer? I'm a nurse. It's not that weird. It was definitely weird. Answer the question. Yes, that will work. She microwaved it briefly, testing the temperature with her finger before bringing it to him. He took the bag with something like reverence, his fingers brushing hers. You are extraordinary, he said quietly. I'm practical, but she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Drink. Heal. Then we need to figure out what to do next. He drank, and Emma tried not to watch the way his throat worked, the way color began to return to his pale skin, the way his wounds knitted themselves together with visible speed. Within minutes, he looked less like a dying man and more like some kind of dark prince who'd wandered out of a Gothic painting. Better? She asked. Much. He set the empty bag aside. Now we need to discuss your safety. My safety. They knew where I was, Emma. They ambushed me. Which means someone in my court is feeding information to my enemies. His jaw tightened. And they will learn that I survived. When they do, they will come looking. Anyone who helped me becomes a target. The words took a moment to sink in. Emma had been so focused on the immediate crisis, the injuries, the impossible reality of vampires that she hadn't thought about the bigger picture. So what do you suggest? She asked. Come with me. Silvain stood, moving with fluid grace despite having been near death 20 minutes ago. To my territory, under my protection, until I root out the traitors and eliminate the threat. Emma laughed, the sound sharp and slightly hysterical. You want me to just leave my life and move in with the Vampire King? I want you alive. He stepped closer, and Emma found herself backing against the counter. They will torture you for information about me. They will kill you slowly and painfully. And there is nothing you can do to stop them. They are faster, stronger, and far more ruthless than any human. You're really selling this, Emma muttered. I am telling you the truth. His hand came up to cup her cheek, cool and gentle. Please, you saved my life. Let me save yours. Emma's mind raced. Her job at the hospital, her tiny apartment, her handful of acquaintances who didn't quite qualify as friends, was any of it worth dying for? And more than that, looking into Silvain's eyes, she saw something beyond the Vampire King. Beyond the danger and impossibility. She saw someone who meant what he said, who would protect her because he'd made a vow, and vampires apparently took those seriously. How long? She asked. A week, perhaps 2. Long enough to identify the traitors and handle them. Handle them, Emma repeated. That's a euphemism for killing them, yes. No apology, no softening, just cold fact. Emma took a breath. Okay. But I need to call my supervisor, tell them I have a family emergency. No details about where you're going, obviously. She pulled out her phone. Where am I going anyway? The Court of Shadows, my home. A slight curve to his lips. I think you will find it interesting. That turned out to be the understatement of the century. The Court of Shadows was accessed through a door in the basement of an upscale restaurant, down a stone staircase that seemed to descend far deeper than should be physically possible. Emma followed Silvain through a series of increasingly ornate passages, lit by what looked like actual torches, until they emerged into something out of a dark fairy tale. The main hall was vast, with vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow. Gothic architecture mixed with modern elegant stone walls hung with contemporary art, Ancient columns wrapped with subtle lighting, furniture that managed to be both medieval and minimalist. And everywhere vampires. They turned to stare as Silvain entered, Emma close behind him. White skin and white hair seemed to be universal, along with those glowing eyes, though the colors varied from red to gold to deep purple. They were beautiful and terrifying, dressed in clothes that ranged from Victorian formal wear to designer jeans, and every single one of them was staring at her like she was either a curious specimen or their next meal.
Silvain.
A woman glided forward, her white hair braided with what looked like actual bones. We thought you were dead. The sun rose hours ago and you hadn't returned. Clearly I am not dead, Valentina. Silvain's voice carried authority that made everyone in the hall straighten, though not for lack of trying on someone's part. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Valentina's eyes narrowed. Someone attacked you? Someone left me to die in an alley with steel blades through my chest. He let that hang in the air. Only the intervention of this human saved my life. Every eye turned to Emma. She fought the urge to hide behind Silvain, instead lifting her chin and meeting their stares. This is Emma Jenkins, Silvain continued. She is under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Spread the word. The threat was clear. Several vampires actually backed up a step. Valentina studied Emma with unsettling intensity. A human, she said slowly. In the court of shadows. The human who saved your king's life. Silvain corrected. She will be treated with the respect due to someone who holds such a debt from me. More murmurs. Emma got the sense this was highly unusual, possibly unprecedented. Great. Silvain led her through the crowd to a corridor lined with doors. The one at the end opened into chambers that made Emma's entire apartment look like a closet. The main room alone was larger than most people's houses, decorated in blacks and deep reds, with a fireplace big enough to stand in and windows that looked out on impossible views of forest at night, though they were definitely underground. Magic, Silvain explained, seeing her confusion. The windows show what we wish to see, right? Magic, because vampires weren't enough. Emma sank onto a leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. This is insane. Yes, he sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from his skin. I am sorry to have dragged you into this world. You didn't drag me. I made a choice. She looked at him. I'm not going to lie, I'm terrified, but I'd make the same choice again. Something shifted in his expression, a warmth that didn't quite reach his eyes but softened them somehow. Why? Because you needed help, that's what I do. Emma shrugged. I help people. Or vampires, apparently. The principle's the same. Most humans would have run. Most humans haven't spent 5 years in an urban ER. You build up a tolerance for weird. Silvain laughed, the sound rich and genuine. I think you may be unique among your kind, Emma Jenkins. I'll take that as a compliment. She glanced around the opulent room. So now what? You mentioned finding traitors. His expression hardened. Now I determine who knew I would be in that location at that time. Only my inner circle had that information. Which means the betrayal comes from those I trust most. That must hurt, Emma said quietly. He looked at her sharply. Why would you say that? Because betrayal always hurts, especially when it comes from people close to you. You're immortal, not emotionless. Silvain was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. You see clearly for someone who has only known of our existence for an hour. I see what's in front of me. Emma met his eyes. You're not as different from humans as you think. You bleed, you can be hurt, you feel betrayed when people you trust try to kill you. The supernatural parts don't change the fundamental things. And what are the fundamental things? Connection, trust, the need to know someone has your back. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sorry, I'm not usually this philosophical. Long shift, you have been awake how long? About 22 hours now? Silvain stood immediately. You need rest, the bedroom is through there. He gestured to a door. Sleep as long as you need. No one will disturb you. Where will you sleep? Vampires require less sleep than humans and I have much to do, he paused. But when I do rest, I have other chambers, you will have privacy. Emma wanted to argue, but exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. She stumbled toward the bedroom, which was equally opulent, dominated by a massive 4-poster bed, with curtains that looked like spun shadow, and barely managed to remove her shoes before collapsing. She woke to darkness and the smell of food. Real food, not blood, which seemed promising. Emma found Silvain in the main room, a covered tray on the table. I had the kitchen prepare dinner, he said. I was unsure of your preferences. Under the cover was pasta primavera, fresh bread, and what looked like homemade tiramisu. Emma's stomach growled audibly. This is perfect, thank you. She dug in, too hungry for self-consciousness. What time is it? Nearly midnight. You slept 16 hours. Emma nearly choked on her pasta. 16 hours? You were exhausted. He watched her eat with an expression she couldn't quite read. I have been investigating while you rested and… His jaw tightened. The attack was coordinated by Silvain Nightborne, one of my oldest advisors. He commands a faction that believes I have become too lenient with humans, too willing to coexist peacefully. They want a return to the old ways being? Humans as cattle. Open feeding, rule through fear and force. Emma set down her fork. I have spent 3 centuries building a system where vampires and humans coexist without widespread bloodshed. We feed from willing donors, we maintain secrecy to avoid hysteria and war, we police our own to prevent needless killing. Lucien sees this as weakness. It's not weakness to choose not to be a monster, Emma said firmly. Silvain's eyes locked on hers. You truly believe that? Of course I do. Having power doesn't mean you have to abuse it. Choosing restraint, choosing cooperation that takes more strength than just taking what you want. He was silent for a long moment. You remind me why I made the choices I did. It is easy to forget, surrounded by those who question every decision, who see mercy as failure. Then they're idiots. Emma took a bite of tiramisu. So what's your plan? Lucien is moving against me openly now. He has convinced 2 of the bloodlines to support him and others are wavering. If I do not act decisively, there will be civil war. Civil war sounds bad. It would be catastrophic, for vampires and humans alike. Silvain leaned forward. I need to remind them why I am king, why I have held this territory for 300 years against all challengers. There was something dark in his voice, something that made Emma remember he wasn't just some injured man she'd helped. He was a predator, ancient and powerful, someone who had ruled through strength and will for longer than she could imagine. What does that mean, exactly? She asked. It means I challenge Lucien formally, single combat. The victor takes control of the court and the loser, D's. Simple, final. Emma set down her fork, no longer hungry. When? Tomorrow night. I have already sent the challenge. He cannot refuse without losing all credibility with his followers. Are you strong enough? You were nearly dead 24 hours ago. Something flickered across his face, surprised that she was worried about him. I am healed. The blood you gave me, the rest, they were enough. I will win. You sound very certain I am. He reached across the table, taking her hand. His skin was still cool, but the touch sent warmth racing up her arm. But if I fall, you must run. Valentina will help you. She is loyal, and she understands what I have built here. She will ensure you escape. Silvain, promise me, Emma. She looked into those crimson eyes and saw genuine fear, not for himself but for her. This vampire king, this immortal predator, was afraid of what would happen to the human nurse he'd known for a day. I promise, she said quietly, but you're not going to fall. His lips curved. Such faith. I didn't save you just to watch you die tomorrow. Emma squeezed his hand. So you'd better win. The arena was underground, naturally, a circular space carved from stone that looked ancient even by vampire standards. Emma stood in what was apparently the royal box, a raised platform with an excellent view of the killing floor below, with Valentina at her side. You care for him, Valentina said. It wasn't a question. Emma didn't bother denying it. Is that a problem? It is unusual. Silvain has not taken a companion in over a century. He stopped allowing himself attachments after his last love betrayed him. What happened? She conspired with his enemies to overthrow him. He discovered the plot the night before they planned to strike. He executed her himself. Valentina's voice was matter of fact. It made him stronger but colder until now. Emma wanted to ask more, but the crowd's noise swelled. Silvain entered from one side of the arena, dressed simply in black pants and a black shirt, feet bare. He looked lethal and beautiful, white hair pulled back, eyes glowing like embers. From the other side came Silvain Nightborne. He was broader than Silvain, built like a warrior, with scars visible on his arms. His eyes were deep gold, his expression contemptuous. Still alive, old friend? Lucien called. I was certain the sun would take you. You were wrong. Silvain's voice carried through the arena. As you are wrong about everything else. I am wrong to want glory for our kind, wrong to remember when we ruled, not hid. Lucien drew a blade silver. Emma realized with a jolt of fear. You have grown weak, Silvain, weak and sentimental. It is time for a stronger king, then try to take what is mine. They collided in a blur of motion too fast for Emma's eyes to fully track. Sound of impact made her flinch. They broke apart, circled, attacked again. Blood appeared on Silvain's shoulder. Emma's hands clenched on the railing. He fights well, Valentina murmured. But Lucien has been preparing for this for years. Training, planning. Silvain will win, Emma said fiercely. Your faith is admirable, but Lucien has the silver blade. As if hearing her, Lucien lunged, the blade aimed for Silvain's heart. Silvain twisted, but not fast enough. The silver caught his side, opening a long gash. He hissed, stumbling back. The crowd roared. Lucien advanced, pressing his advantage. Another cut, this one across Silvain's chest. More blood, black in the torchlight. Emma couldn't watch but couldn't look away. Every instinct screamed to do something, help somehow, but she was helpless up here. Human, fragile, useless. Silvain fell to one knee. Lucien raised the blade for a killing blow. For the old ways, Lucien said. For the future, Silvain replied. He moved faster than Emma had seen him move before inside Lucien's guard. His hand struck Lucien's wrist and the silver blade went flying. Before Lucien could react, Silvain's hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground. "You forget, old friend," Silvain said quietly, voice carrying through the sudden silence. "I built the old ways. I was ancient when you were turned, and I chose to evolve not from weakness but from wisdom." His other hand struck, fingers piercing Lucien's chest like it was paper. Lucien's eyes went wide. Silvain leaned close, whispered something Emma couldn't hear, and then ripped his hand back. Lucien's body crumbled to ash. The arena erupted in noise, cheers, shouts, the sound of vampires acknowledging their king. Silvain stood in the center of the carnage, covered in blood, breathing hard. His eyes swept the crowd, then rose to find Emma, their gazes locked across the distance. Emma pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer, and smiled. He smiled back. The victory celebration lasted until dawn forced the vampires to retreat to their chambers. Emma stayed close to Silvain, who had been mobbed by his followers, some congratulating him, others pledging renewed loyalty, still others seeking favor now that the power struggle was resolved. Finally they escaped back to his chambers. Silvain collapsed onto the sofa with a weariness that seemed to go bone deep. "You're hurt," Emma said immediately, moving to examine the silver wounds on his chest and side. "They will heal." But he didn't stop her from gently probing the injuries. "Slower than the others did," she observed. "Because of the silver, yes. It disrupts our healing, but I will recover in a few days." Emma fetched clean water and cloth, cleaning the wounds with the same care she'd shown in her bathroom a lifetime ago. Silvain watched her, something shifting in his expression. "You were afraid," he said quietly. "I saw it when Lucien struck me. Of course I was afraid. I thought he was going to kill you. You have known me for 2 days, so?" Emma met his eyes. 2 days or 200 years, I don't want to watch someone die. Especially not you." "Why especially me?" The question hung between them. Emma could deflect, make a joke, pull back from this moment, but looking at him, ancient and powerful and somehow vulnerable in his exhaustion, she couldn't. "Because you matter," she said simply. "To me. You matter." Silvain's hand came up to cup her cheek, the gesture becoming familiar. "You terrify me." "Emma Jenkins, I terrify you? You're the vampire king, and you make me feel things I stopped allowing myself to feel centuries ago." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You make me remember what it is to hope, to want something beyond duty and survival." Emma's breath caught. "Silvain, I am falling for you." The words were soft but absolute. "It is too soon, too impossible, too dangerous. But it is true nonetheless." "It's not just you," Emma whispered. "I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But when I thought Lucien might win, when I thought I might lose you," she broke off, shaking her head. "I've never felt like this before." "Like what?" "Like finding something I didn't know I was looking for." Silvain kissed her. It was gentle, careful, his cool lips moving against hers with a tenderness that made her ache. Emma's hands came up to tangle in his white hair, pulling him closer. He made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss, one arm wrapping around her waist. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "You should rest," Emma said, though she made no move to leave his arms. "I should," he agreed, not releasing her. "Will you stay?" "Just to sleep. I promise I can control myself." Emma knew she should say no, should maintain some kind of boundary, should be sensible for once in her life. Instead, she nodded. They moved to the bedroom and Emma curled up beside him, her head on his chest. She could hear his heart beating slower than hers, but steady. His arm wrapped around her, holding her close. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair, "for saving me, for seeing me as more than a monster." "You're not a monster," Emma said firmly. "You're just Silvain." She felt him smile against her temple. "Just Silvain. I quite like that." They slept as the sun rose outside, hidden safe beneath the earth. Vampire and human tangled together like they'd been doing this for centuries instead of days. Emma woke to find Silvain already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That's not creepy at all," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "You snore. I do not. A little. It is endearing." He grinned, and Emma's heart did something complicated in her chest. "I have been thinking. Dangerous, Emma." He caught her hand, suddenly serious. "The threat is eliminated. Lucien is dead. His followers have scattered or submitted. You are safe to return to your life." The words hit her like cold water. Return to her life, her tiny apartment, her exhausting job, her lonely existence. The thought made her chest tighten. Right, she said, forcing brightness into her voice. Of course, that was the deal. It was. His thumb traced patterns on her palm. But I find myself hoping you will not go. Emma's eyes snapped to his. What? Stay. The word was raw, honest. Stay here in the court. With me. I know it is an impossible ask. You would be giving up everything familiar, everything human. But He stopped, jaw working. I do not wish to lose you, Silvain. You do not have to answer now. Think about it. I can give you anything you desire: wealth, security, purpose. I can ensure you want for nothing. But what I cannot do is pretend that these past 2 days have not changed something fundamental in me. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I have existed for 3 centuries, Emma. I have not lived. You make me want to live again. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. That's not fair. You can't just say things like that. Why not, if they are true? Because she broke off, frustrated. Because my life up there is barely a life at all. Because I'm already half in love with you and it's terrifying. Because saying yes to this feels like jumping off a cliff and hoping you'll catch me. I will catch you, Silvain said fiercely. Always. I swear it on my blood and name. You really mean that? I have never meant anything more. Emma looked at him, this impossible, ancient, beautiful creature who had somehow become essential to her in the space of a heartbeat. She thought about her apartment, her job, the endless cycle of work and sleep and loneliness. She thought about the way Silvain looked at her, like she was precious, like she mattered. She thought about the future stretching before them, strange and uncertain but filled with possibility. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll stay. Emma smiled through her tears. I must be insane, but I'll stay. Silvain kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, he was grinning like a fool. You will not regret this, he said. I'd better not. I'm giving up my apartment and it has really good water pressure. He laughed, pulling her close. I will install the most magnificent shower you have ever seen. That's all I really wanted. They spent the day making plans. Emma would need to resign from her job properly, pack up her apartment, notify her landlord. Silvain insisted on sending vampires to help, which led to a surreal conversation about whether centuries-old creatures of the night could be trusted with her grandmother's china.
I fought in the Crusades,
one vampire said indignantly when Emma expressed concern. I think I can manage a box of plates. The Crusades didn't have bubble wrap, Emma pointed out. Valentina appeared in the evening, studying Emma with those unsettling eyes. So you are staying, apparently. Good. The vampire's expression softened slightly. Silvain needs someone who challenges him, who sees beyond the crown and power. You will be good for him. I hope so, Emma hesitated. Can I ask you something? The woman who betrayed him before, what was she like? Valentina's eyes grew distant. Beautiful, charming, ambitious. She loved power more than she ever loved Silvain, and when someone offered her more power, she chose it. Silvain discovered her plotting with his enemies, planning to have him assassinated so she could rule in his place. That's awful. It made him stronger, but also harder. He stopped trusting, stopped allowing anyone close. Valentina looked at Emma. Until you. I have not seen him like this in over a century. You gave him back something he thought he had lost. What's that? Hope? Valentina smiled, revealing her own sharp fangs. Do not waste it. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Emma resigned from the hospital, citing a family emergency that required her to relocate. Her supervisor was disappointed but understanding. Packing up her apartment took less time than she expected. Turns out she hadn't accumulated as much in 5 years as she thought. Or maybe she just hadn't been living, as Silvain said. Just existing. The vampires who helped move her belongings were surprisingly careful and respectful, though they did get into an argument about the best way to arrange her books in her new chambers. Apparently vampire royalty took interior decoration very seriously. Silvain was busy dealing with the aftermath of Lucien's rebellion, rooting out the last of the conspirators, stabilizing his alliances, reaffirming his authority. But he made time for Emma every day, showing her more of the court, introducing her to the key members of his bloodlines, explaining the intricacies of vampire politics. Emma found herself fascinated by the hidden world beneath the city. The Court of Shadows was just one part of a vast network of vampire territories, each ruled by different lords and ladies who owed allegiance to Silvain. There were blood banks run by vampires for vampires, clinics where humans could safely donate in exchange for payment, even a vampire-run security company that protected both human and vampire interests. We are not so different from humans, Silvain explained as they walked through one of the underground markets. We have politics, economics, art, culture. We simply operate in shadow. Why? Emma asked. Why stay hidden? You're clearly powerful enough to do what? Rule openly? Subjugate humanity? He shook his head. There are more humans than vampires by 1,000 to 1. If they knew we existed and felt truly threatened, they would hunt us to extinction. We have technology now, but they have numbers in the sun. No, secrecy is not cowardice, it is survival. Emma squeezed his hand. That makes sense, it just seems like a lot of work. It is. But the alternative is war, and I have seen enough war to last several lifetimes. They passed a vampire artist painting a portrait, a cafe where vampires and humans mingled without the humans seeming to realize what their companions were, a bookshop that appeared to specialize in ancient texts. I could spend years down here and never see everything, Emma said. You have years. Silvain pulled her close, kissing her temple. Many of them if you wish. That stopped Emma cold. What do you mean? He hesitated, something conflicted crossing his face. There is a way for humans to extend their lives significantly without becoming full vampires. A blood bond. It would allow you to live centuries instead of decades, retain your humanity but gain some of our strengths. Why didn't you mention this before? Because it is a permanent decision. There is no reversing it. And because he looked away. Because it would bind you to me. You would need my blood regularly to maintain the bond. If I died, you would eventually return to normal human aging. Emma processed this, so I would be dependent on you. Yes. The word was heavy, which is why I did not wish to pressure you. Your choice to stay must be freely made, not out of fear of mortality or desire for power. Emma was quiet for a long moment thinking. Finally she said, Can I have time to decide? Of course, there is no rush. But she could see relief in his eyes that she hadn't rejected the idea outright. That night, lying in their bed because it was theirs now, she'd claimed half the closet and Silvain had looked ridiculously pleased about it. Emma asked the question that had been nagging at her. Do you want me to do the blood bond? Silvain was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, yes. Selfishly, desperately, yes. The thought of having only decades with you when I have centuries left is unbearable. But I want you to choose it because you want it, not because I do. You have already given up so much for me. I gave up a job that was burning me out and an apartment I could barely afford to live in a palace with a vampire king who looks at me like I hung the moon. I'm not sure that counts as sacrifice. He turned to face her. Do you miss it? Your old life? Honestly? No. Emma traced the line of his jaw. I miss my coworkers sometimes. I miss the feeling of helping patients. But the actual life I was living? I don't miss being lonely and exhausted and going through the motions. Here I feel alive. You are alive. He caught her hand, kissing her palm. You are the most alive person I have ever known. Then ask me. What? Ask me properly. About the blood bond. Don't just explain it clinically. Ask me. Silvain sat up, pulling her with him. In the dim light, his eyes glowed red and earnest. Emma Jenkins, would you accept a blood bond with me? Would you let me share my life force with you, binding us together for as long as we both shall exist? Would you give me the gift of your presence not just for decades but for centuries? Emma's heart pounded. This was insane. She'd known him for less than 2 weeks. She was 28 years old and he was asking her to commit to something that would change the fundamental nature of her existence. Yes, she said, his eyes widened. You are certain? I've never been more certain of anything. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you, Silvain Nightborne. I know it's too soon and too fast and completely crazy, but I love you. And if you're offering me a way to stay with you, to build a life together that isn't cut short by my mortality, then yes. 1,000 times yes. Silvain kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. When they broke apart, both were trembling. The ritual is simple but permanent, he said, voice rough. I must drink from you, then you from me. Our blood mingles, creates the bond. It will hurt initially, but then he paused. You will feel our connection, always. I already feel our connection, Emma said. Not like this. This will be deeper. You will sense my emotions, my location. I will sense yours. We will be bound in a way that transcends normal relationships. Sounds perfect. He laughed, shaky and genuine. You are remarkable. I'm really not. I'm just a nurse who happened to find the right vampire bleeding in an alley. You are everything. He kissed her again, softer. Shall we do this now? Emma nodded. Silvain moved them so she was cradled in his lap, her throat exposed. His fangs lengthened and she felt a moment of primal fear before his hand stroked her hair. Trust me, he murmured. I do. The bite was sharp, painful for an instant, then melting into something warm and dreamlike. Emma felt her blood flowing, felt Silvain drinking, felt the intimacy of it like nothing she'd experienced. Her vision swam, pleasure and pain blurring together. Then he pulled back, biting his own wrist. Blood welled, black and shimmering. He offered it to her. Drink, he said. Emma pressed her mouth to his wrist. The blood tasted like dark wine and metal and something indefinable, something ancient. She drank, feeling it slide down her throat, warming her from the inside. Power flowed through her, foreign and exhilarating. Silvain gasped. Emma pulled back, meeting his eyes, and felt it, the bond snapping into place like a lock clicking home. Suddenly she could sense him, his emotions a current beneath her own. Love, fierce and protective. Desire, joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "I feel you," she whispered. "And I you." His voice was awed. "Your strength, your compassion, your beautiful, brilliant mind." They sat there, forehead to forehead, feeling the bond settle into place. Emma's heart was racing, but she felt stronger, more alive than ever. She could sense the power thrumming through her now, borrowed from Silvain but hers to wield. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I could run a marathon, or fight a bear, or both." She laughed. "Is this normal?" "For the first few days, yes. The power is intoxicating. It will settle into something more manageable." He kissed her nose. "You are now effectively immortal, Emma. As long as I live, you will not age." The enormity of that hit her. Centuries stretching ahead. Time to do everything, learn everything, be everything she'd ever wanted. "Okay," she said. "So what do I do with immortality?" "Whatever you wish," Silvain smiled. "You could continue your medical training, become a doctor, a surgeon, a researcher. We have vampires who work in human medicine, carefully of course. Or you could study something entirely different. You have time for a dozen lifetimes now." Emma thought about that. The endless possibilities, no longer constrained by the brevity of a human lifespan. It was dizzying and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "I think," she said slowly, "I want to help people, human and vampire, bridge the gap between your world and mine. A noble goal." His hand stroked her hair, "And one I will support in any way I can." They spent the rest of the night talking about the future, making plans that stretched decades and centuries. Emma would finish her nursing degree, then pursue medical school. Silvain would introduce her to the vampire physicians, who could teach her about treating supernatural injuries and illnesses. Together they would work to improve the systems that kept vampires and humans coexisting peacefully. But beneath the practical planning was something deeper, the sense that they had found in each other something rare and precious. A partnership, a love that transcended the boundaries between their kinds. As dawn approached and Silvain's eyes grew heavy with the vampiric need for daylight sleep, Emma curled against him, marveling at how her life had changed. A week ago she'd been alone, exhausted, going through the motions. Now she was bound to a vampire king, immortal, preparing to build a future she'd never imagined possible. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me save you." Silvain's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for not walking past that alley. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," he corrected. "The best was saying yes to staying." Emma smiled, closing her eyes. She could feel the bond between them, warm and strong, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone anymore, that she never would be again. 3 months later, Emma stood in front of a classroom full of vampire medical students, lecturing on human anatomy. It was surreal and wonderful, teaching ancient creatures about the intricacies of mortal biology. But they listened with genuine interest, taking notes, asking thoughtful questions. After class, Valentina caught up with her in the corridor. "You are good at this," the vampire said. "Teaching." "Thanks. It's different from the ER, but I like it." Emma smiled. "How are preparations going for the summit?" "Nearly complete. All 7 territorial kings have confirmed their attendance." Valentina looked pleased. "It is the first time all the vampire rulers of North America have gathered in 50 years. Silvain believes your presence will help convince them to strengthen protections for humans." Emma felt a flutter of nerves. Meeting one vampire king had been terrifying enough. 7 seemed like asking for trouble. But Silvain believed she could help bridge the divide between vampires and humans, and she trusted him. "I'll do my best," she said. "That is all anyone can ask." Emma made her way back to their chambers, finding Silvain at his desk reviewing documents. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up in a way that still made her heart skip. "How was class?" he asked. "Good. They're actually pretty engaged students once you get past the initial terror." Emma draped herself across his lap, earning an amused sound. "Valentina says the summit is almost ready." "It is." His arms wrapped around her waist. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified, but also excited." She twisted to look at him. "Do you really think we can convince them?" "I think you can convince them." His hand stroked her hair. "You convinced me to hope again. Compared to that, 7 stubborn vampire kings should be easy." Emma laughed. "Your faith is inspiring or delusional, I'm not sure which. Both, perhaps." He kissed her temple. "But I have seen what you can do, Emma. How you bridge worlds just by being yourself. How you make the impossible seem reasonable." "I just try to help." "Exactly. And that is precisely what is needed." The summit took place in a neutral territory, a massive underground complex that had apparently been built during the Cold War and repurposed by vampires. The 7 kings arrived with their entourages, and Emma had never seen so many vampires in one place. White hair and glowing eyes everywhere, dressed in styles ranging from ancient to modern, all radiating power and danger. Silvain introduced her to each king personally. Constantine of the northeast, regal and cold. Demetrius of the southeast, charming but calculating. Seraphim of the Midwest, ancient and strange. Theron of the Southwest, young by vampire standards and brash. Raphael of the mountain region, quiet and intense. Lysander of the Pacific Northwest, artistic and mercurial. And finally Nikolai of Canada, diplomatic and shrewd. A human, Constantine said, studying Emma with gold eyes. How unexpected, a human who saved Silvain's life. Silvain corrected smoothly. And my blood-bonded companion. That caused a stir. Apparently blood bonds with humans were rare, reserved for the most significant relationships. Emma felt the weight of 7 sets of ancient eyes on her. I am told you wish to speak about human protections, Nikolai said. This should be interesting. The meeting took place in a circular room, the 7 kings seated around a table with Silvain at the head. Emma stood beside him, trying not to show her nerves. The current system works but barely, Silvain began. We maintain secrecy but at the cost of constant vigilance and occasional human casualties. I propose we strengthen protections, create clearer boundaries, and increase consequences for vampires who kill unnecessarily. Humans die all the time, Theron said dismissively. Why should we care? Because unnecessary death draws attention, Emma said, surprising herself by speaking. Because every human who disappears under mysterious circumstances is another potential threat to your secrecy. Because right now you're balancing on a knife's edge between coexistence and discovery. 7 pairs of eyes turned to her. Emma swallowed but continued. I work with human patients who have been fed on without consent. I see the trauma, the fear, the damage it does. And I've also worked with willing donors who understand what they're giving and are compensated fairly. The difference is consent and respect. She looked around the table. You want to maintain secrecy? Then give humans less reason to fear you. Make the system work better. Protect the innocent. Police your own. You speak boldly for a human, Constantine said. She speaks truth, Silvain corrected, and I stand by her words. The debate went on for hours. Emma presented data statistics on vampire-related deaths, patterns of human investigation, economic impacts of the current system. She told stories of patients she'd treated, both human and vampire, showing how both communities suffered under the current barely maintained peace. Slowly, grudgingly, the other kings began to listen. Demetrius suggested expanding the donor clinics. Seraphim proposed harsher penalties for rogue vampires. Even Constantine admitted that some increased structure might be beneficial. By the end of the summit, they had the framework for a new treaty, one that strengthened human protections while maintaining vampire security. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the other kings departed, Nikolai paused to speak with Emma privately. You handled that well, he said. Most humans would have cowered in the corner. I'm not most humans, Emma said. He smiled, fangs glinting. No, you are not. Silvain chose well. He glanced at Silvain, who was speaking with Raphael. He is different now, lighter. That is your doing. We help each other, Emma said simply. That is what the best partnerships do. Nikolai inclined his head. I look forward to seeing what else you accomplish, Emma Jenkins. After he left, Silvain swept Emma into his arms. You were magnificent. I was terrified, magnificently terrified then. He kissed her soundly. You changed their minds. You made them see humans as partners rather than prey. Do you know how significant that is? Pretty significant? Emma guessed. Incredibly significant. You may have just altered the course of vampire-human relations for the next century. He spun her around, grinning like a fool. I am so proud of you. Emma laughed, dizzy with relief and joy. Well, someone had to knock some sense into you ancient stubborn creatures. That someone being you, apparently. He set her down, cupping her face in his hands. I love you, Emma Jenkins. My savior, my partner, my greatest treasure. I love you too, Vampire King. She pulled him down for a kiss. Now take me home. I want to celebrate properly. With pleasure. 6 months later, Emma graduated from medical school, an accelerated program made possible by her enhanced memory and stamina from the blood bond. Silvain was in the audience, beaming with pride, looking absurdly out of place among the human families in his elegant Victorian-style suit. I'm so glad you could make it, Emma said afterward, diploma in hand. I would not have missed this for anything. He pulled her close, heedless of the stares from other graduates. Dr. Jenkins, it has a lovely ring to it. Not officially a doctor yet, still have residency, a formality. He kissed her nose. You will be brilliant, as you are in all things. Emma's residency was split between a human hospital and the vampire medical facilities beneath the court. She learned to treat everything from mundane human ailments to vampire-specific conditions to injuries caused by magic and supernatural conflict. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and she loved every moment. Silvain supported her completely, adjusting his schedule to accommodate her insane hours, bringing her food when she forgot to eat, listening to her decompress after particularly difficult cases. He also involved her more in court politics, valuing her perspective on how policies would affect both vampires and humans. "You have become essential," he told her one night as they lay tangled together. "Not just to me, but to the court, to everything we are building." "That's kind of terrifying," Emma admitted. "Why?" "Because what if I mess up? What if I give bad advice and someone gets hurt? Then we fix it." His hand stroked her hair. "Emma, you have sound judgment and a good heart. That is all anyone can ask. You will make mistakes, everyone does, but you will also do tremendous good." "How are you so sure?" "Because I have watched you for a year now. I have seen you handle impossible situations with grace and compassion. I have seen you change minds and hearts, mine included." He kissed her forehead. "You are going to change the world, Emma Jenkins, and I am honored to stand beside you while you do it." 2 years after their blood bond, on the anniversary of the day Emma had found Silvain bleeding in that alley, he proposed properly. They were in the underground gardens, a vast space filled with night-blooming flowers and trees that somehow thrived without sunlight, when he suddenly dropped to one knee. "Emma Jenkins," he said, producing a ring that glittered with dark jewels. "You saved my life. Then you gave me a reason to live it. You are my partner, my love, my heart. Will you marry me?" Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Yes, yes, of course yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, because of course he'd somehow figured out her size, and then swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. "I love you," she said. "So much, and I you for now and always." The wedding was a blend of human and vampire traditions, held at midnight in the court's main hall. Emma wore a dress that seemed woven from shadow and moonlight, a gift from the vampire artisans. Silvain wore black that made him look like a prince from some dark fairy tale. Valentina officiated, speaking ancient words about blood and bond and eternal commitment. Emma's hands shook as she took Silvain's, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment. "In the eyes of our kind and yours," Valentina said, "I pronounce you bound in marriage. What is joined here cannot be undone." Silvain kissed her then, deep and thorough, and the assembled vampires cheered. Emma tasted her own tears, joy and love and disbelief that this was her life now. At the reception, vampires and humans mingled, something that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. Emma's former co-workers from the hospital stood beside ancient vampire lords, everyone celebrating the impossible union. "You did good, kid," one of her old nursing supervisors said, hugging her. "He looks at you like you're the only thing in the world that matters." "That's because she is," Silvain said, appearing at Emma's side. "Everything else is simply detail." The supervisor laughed. "You take care of her, Vampire King." "With my immortal life," he promised. As the night wore on, Emma found herself on one of the balconies overlooking the underground city. Silvain joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Happy?" he murmured, deliriously. She leaned back against him. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I found you bleeding in an alley and now here we are, married, bound, partners in all things. It's insane. The best things usually are." He turned her in his arms. "I have something for you." "Another gift?" "You already gave me the ring. This is different." He produced a small velvet box. Inside was a pendant, a drop of what looked like black crystal on a silver chain. "It's beautiful," Emma said. "It contains a drop of my blood, crystallized through magic." Silvain fastened it around her neck. "As long as you wear this, I can find you anywhere, and in any emergency, if you break it, I will know instantly that you need me." Emma touched the pendant, feeling the faint pulse of power in it. "That's incredibly romantic and slightly overprotective." "I am a vampire king, Emma. Overprotective is in the job description." But he was grinning. "I nearly lost you once, when Lucien's last followers attempted that kidnapping. I will not risk it again. That was 6 months ago, and you literally tore through 3 vampires to reach me. I think I'm safe. Humor me. Always." She kissed him. "Thank you. For this, for everything, for choosing me." "You chose me first," he reminded her. "When you stopped in that alley. When you bandaged a dying stranger and never guessed he was the Vampire King. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," he corrected. "The best was saying yes to staying, to the bond, to this." Emma smiled against his lips. "I love you, Silvain Nightborne, and I love you, Emma Nightborne." Emma Nightborne. She tested the name silently, feeling how it fit. Perfect, right, like she'd been waiting her whole life to become this person. 5 years after that night in the alley, Emma stood in her clinic, a facility that served both humans and vampires, the first of its kind, and marveled at how far they'd come. Human patients received treatment alongside vampires, separated only when necessary for safety. Willing donors gave blood in clean, safe conditions and were well compensated. Vampires who needed medical care no longer suffered in silence or secrecy. It was everything she'd dreamed of building. Silvain appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a smile. Ready to go home? Almost. Just finishing some charts. She signed the last one with a flourish. Okay, now I'm ready. They walked through the underground city together, hand in hand. It had become routine, this life of theirs, split between human and vampire worlds, working to bridge the gap between them. But it never felt boring, never felt like settling. Every day brought new challenges, new victories, new reasons to fight for the world they were building. I have news, Silvain said, as they reached their chambers. The European Vampire Council has reached out. They want to discuss implementing a similar protection system. Seriously? Emma's eyes widened. Your work here has garnered attention across the vampire world. They want to learn from our model. He pulled her close. You are changing everything, Emma. Not just here, but everywhere. We're changing things, she corrected. This is both of us. It started with you, your compassion, your refusal to see vampires as monsters or humans as prey. You saw the possibility of something better. Emma thought back to that night in the alley, the split-second decision to help a dying stranger. If she'd walked past, if she'd called the police instead, if she'd been too afraid to act, none of this would exist. Silvain would be dead, the court would have fallen into chaos, and she would still be alone in her tiny apartment, exhausted and going through the motions. Do you ever wonder, she said quietly, what would have happened if I hadn't stopped? Every day. His arms tightened around her. And every day I am grateful beyond words that you did, me too. She kissed him softly. Best decision I ever made. Second best, he corrected with a grin. The best was saying yes to staying. I know. Emma laughed. You're never going to let that go, are you? Never, it is too important. He cupped her face, suddenly serious. You chose me, Emma. Not once but again and again. You chose this life, this world, this future. And I will spend every day of my very long life ensuring you never regret it. I won't, Emma said with absolute certainty. I couldn't. You're my home, Silvain. Wherever you are, that's where I belong. They stood there in their chambers, wrapped in each other's arms, and Emma felt the blood bond humming between them, a constant reminder that they were connected on every level. Heart, mind, soul, and blood. Human and vampire, partners in all things. She'd saved a stranger in an alley, never guessing he was the vampire king. And in return, he'd given her a life beyond her wildest dreams, purpose, love, and centuries to spend building a better world. Outside their window, the underground city sparkled with lights, vampires and humans moving through its streets in peaceful coexistence. It wasn't perfect, not yet. There were still challenges, still conflicts, still work to be done. But it was better than it had been, and it would keep getting better. Because Emma had stopped in that alley. Because she'd seen someone who needed help and hadn't hesitated. Because she'd chosen compassion over fear, connection over isolation, love over loneliness. And because Silvain had chosen her right back, his savior, his partner, his queen in all but title. What are you thinking, he asked, studying her face. That I'm really glad I worked that double shift 2 years ago, otherwise I wouldn't have been walking past that alley. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. The universe has strange ways of bringing people together. The universe, a double shift, and my refusal to leave people bleeding in alleys. Emma smiled. But yeah, I'll give the universe some credit. They moved to the bed, settling into their usual positions. Emma curled against Silvain's side, his arm wrapped around her, the two of them fitting together like they'd been designed for exactly this. I love you, Silvain murmured into her hair. Thank you for saving me, for seeing me, for choosing me. Thank you for letting me, Emma replied. For opening your world to me, for making me part of your life. You are not part of my life, Emma. You are my life. The rest is simply context. Emma's eyes filled with happy tears. That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said. Then I need to try harder. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Because you deserve poetry and sonnets and every beautiful word ever written. I just need you, Emma said simply. Everything else is bonus. They fell asleep like that, vampire and human, king and doctor, husband and wife. The bond between them glowed in the darkness. A testament to the night, Emma had bandaged a stranger in an alley and set in motion a love story that would span centuries. The world above continued its hurried pace, unaware of the kingdom beneath its feet, the vampires who walked among humans, the delicate balance being maintained through dedication and hope. But in the court of shadows, in chambers that held a human woman and the vampire king who loved her, there was peace. Emma dreamed of the future, the clinic expanding, the protection spreading to other territories, the slow but steady progress toward a world where humans and vampires could coexist openly and safely. She dreamed of the work ahead, the challenges to face, the victories to celebrate. But mostly she dreamed of Silvain, her impossible love, her unexpected fate, her eternal partner. The stranger she'd saved who had saved her right back, pulling her out of a half-life and into something vivid and real and beautiful. In the morning, or what passed for morning in the underground city, Emma would wake to find Silvain watching her with those crimson eyes, love written in every line of his ancient face. They would rise and face whatever challenges the day brought, together as they faced everything. But for now they slept in peaceful darkness, two souls bound by blood and choice and love that would endure through centuries. Emma had bandaged a stranger left for dead in an alley, never guessing he was the Vampire King. And in doing so, she had found her destiny, her purpose, and her forever. The end of one story, the beginning of countless others, all spinning out from that single moment of compassion in a dark alley on an ordinary night that became the most extraordinary night of Emma's very long life. Human and vampire, doctor and king, wife and husband, partners in building a better world, one choice, one act of kindness, one moment of courage at a time. This was their story, their love, their future, and it was perfect.